will then kind of talk us through the next section of our forum. Thanks for coming. We had about 30 people sign up, and I think that's about how many folks we have here right now. There's a few in the back still waiting to come in, which is why I'm continuing to do Pastor Blab for the first couple of seconds. Let's start with a word of prayer. Good and gracious God, we dearly love the people that you place around us, and especially those who are in greatest need. The 25th chapter of Matthew, you ask us to treat those who are beneath and below and around and about as if they were our brothers and sisters, as if they were you. Today, we are here to explore how we can best do that as a community of people, a community of grace, who cares about our brothers and sisters in need. We ask that you would enlighten our hearts, open our minds, and give us a spirit of cooperation. And as we gather and confer and go forth, that you would go with us. We ask all this in the name of our risen Lord, Jesus Christ. Amen. Couple of quick announcements before I turn over to Pastor June. She'll be giving you directions about what to do after she makes her presentation, which is a sharing. And then on your way out, and she'll repeat this at the end, but I'm saying it now so you can kind of get in your head. You all passed by a bunch of sign-up sheets, and you all went to sign up before you came in. She will explain that to you. Okay. And then that's part of our breakout session, because you're going to do work. This is a work session today after we do introduction. But also sitting on that table where the sign-up sheets are, and we ask that you would put your name on them. There are little books that you can pick up to take notes in and keep them. So please feel free to take one of those with you as you go. I think then that concludes my announcements and prayer. I'm going to turn it over to Pastor June Frank.
Thank you. Again, thank you for being here. I think we have a big task ahead of us, but I think these are the right people. We've got the right people gathered in the room to work forward. What I would like to do this morning is just briefly recap what's been done so far, what we have done. And again, it will be briefly, and then what's been done in the meantime, and what we hope to do from here on. So we had a forum just like this. We met here 2 months ago in November. There was a steering committee out of the Fairborn Christian Alliance that got us to that initial forum. That was Chris Tanruther, Keith Whitty, Nancy Trimble, Briston Wells, Missy Frost, and myself. And so we debriefed then after that November forum to make a plan of action for the next steps that we'll take. Our intentions were to give direction to the Fairborn Christian Alliance with 3 strategic goals, and those are listed on your paper there. The first was to establish a satellite area, office, or central location in Fairborn that would be a one-stop shop for persons in Fairborn who are experiencing homelessness. And this would include gathering the statistical information from Greene County service agencies that might have specific information and statistics that were localized to the Fairborn area. So that's one of the things that committee would work on. What's all needed to say, yes, we want to have a satellite offices here in Fairborn, because the issues are here in Fairborn and all the services are in Xenia. So what's it going to take to do that? So that's going to be a committee that you might serve on. How are we going to get, what do we need to get? What's all the information that needs to be gathered, and where's that going to be? So how do we get a satellite office here? So that's goal number 1 that we're putting forward today. The second one, establish an emergency shelter. So whether that's a warming center in the winter or a cooling center in the summer, or immediate emergency overnight shelter, how can that happen? What needs to happen so that can happen? So that's a second goal. So some of you might be working on what's it going to take to have a place in Fairborn where someone might need a place to get warm or to cool off or to spend the night. What's it going to take to make that happen? So that's the second goal and the second committee's work. Third then was to establish an executive board that would find an executive director and find ways of supporting a compensation for that director, as well as establish the terms, responsibilities, and goals for such a board. So, that's kind of an overarching framework there. It would, if there's going to be an executive director overseeing that, there's going to be probably need to be some funding, some compensation, but then that board working with that director will also look for funding, for grants, for other things that will help sustain an emergency shelter or satellite offices. So that's a big overarching umbrella. Those were the three goals that the steering committee took to the December 5th Fairborn Christian Alliance ministers gathering. We took those three goals, but those same ministers were at that initial forum, and in our discussion there came up with two more goals. So that's continuing down your list there, D and E. So that would be to establish a flow chart that would demonstrate various situations and what would be needed to move someone from being unsheltered to sheltered. So, what's the process for someone who is unsheltered? And the example we kind of used at the November forum is Briston Wells, who's the advocate at the Fairborn City Schools for students experiencing homelessness and their families. What does she do when she's aware that there's and Briston's not here, is she? Okay. What would she do? How does she begin to help a student and their family find the resources that they need? Nobody seems to know the whole process. It's all pieces, parts. And so what we'd like to try to do is start at various situations. Okay, if you're in this situation, here's what needs to happen on down the line to move from being unsheltered to sheltered. And then would have that flow chart and know what all those steps are. It's not making 5 other calls to find out what to do here or here or here, but try to put all those resources in one steady flow chart. So you might work on that group too. So that's 4. And then number 5, there was another goal then that the FCA put forth. The 5th goal was to establish prevention and diversion services that would develop a method of assistance to prevent an at-risk individual or family from losing their housing. So that's a whole nother area. But if there's someone on the edge, and we know sometimes it's just a hospital stay or a car repair or something like that, and boom, you've lost your job, you've lost your income, and now you've lost your house or your shelter. So what would those what prevention services might be available? So that committee would be working on that. So at the December 5th Fairborn Christian Alliance meeting, some of those in attendance already indicated a committee that matched their interest and knowledge. So there are a few people signed up on each committee already. And that kind of brings us to where we are today. That you're up to speed. You know everything that I know now. So as you can see, we need more information to reach those goals. But that's where we are at this point, and everyone here in this room plays some part in this ongoing process of helping someone move from being unsheltered to sheltered, or helping to prevent someone from losing the shelter they already have. So before we break into these 5 groups, and we're going to tell you what room that is in, we'd like also just to know who's here and what agency perhaps you represent, or what office in the city or county government assistance and things like that. So I think if we could take a moment and just introduce ourselves, who you are, and maybe what agency or group you represent, and if you think you know what committee or area you'd like to focus on, why don't you go ahead and say that too. So we want to just begin here and go around the room. I know. So, yeah.
Shannon Webster, I'm Green County's mobility manager and public transit. While in house there at the agency, I help find transportation solutions to challenges. So it may not necessarily be with Green Cats, and I'm willing to serve on whatever committee you think transportation needs are going to be the best served.
And Fred Pomeroy, not sure, whatever, that last one.
I'm here with my colleague and I'm representing Operation Fairborn, which is a grassroots effort to help post 9/11 veterans in Green County. My name is Jane, or only contact person or I are the managers of the Fairborn District.
Pastor Keith Whitting, I represent Bethlehem Lutheran Church and School in Fairborn.
Gene Klein, pastor of Trinity United Church of Christ here in Fairborn.
Marlene Foster, another
I'm Kathy Hitchcock, I'm representing pedestrian rights and mental illness in Clark and Madison County.
I'm Benjamin Brill, I'm a vicar here at the at St. Mark's and at Christ. The four congregation consortium is of Lutheran Saints in Ministry. If you don't know what a vicar is, it's kind of a fancy term for
John Paddock, I'm from St. Christopher's.
Anna Blair, with the Rehabilitation Center, we provide substance use and mental health services on an outpatient basis here in Fairborn.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Penny Matthew Johnson. I'm from Miami Valley Community Action Partnership, and we represent emergency and transitional housing, and I'm willing to serve on the emergency.
My name is Mark Howe. I'm with Mental Health and Drug Enforcement Department in Madison County. I'm here representing mental health issues, substance abuse issues like homelessness. I see that as a variety of
Pasadena Caldwell, senior pastor of the Manual Ministry, in partnership with Great One here at the fellowship here at the afternoon on Sunday. Just here to get involved with the community and the community to be of service. I'm Chrissy Boss with the City of Fairborn, for housing advocate, and I will serve for a new leadership.
I am John Hobbs. I'm the executive director of Housing Solutions for Green County. We provide permanent supportive housing, and our criteria is they have to be homeless, we have to have a severe persistent mental illness, and
I'm Greg Stroud, I'm the pastor at Fair Creek Church. And again, I'm kind of representing who will probably be someone who will be doing this for us, so we want to be involved so wherever we
Ray Heiser from Fairborn First Baptist Church. I'll serve wherever I'm needed.
Bob Andrews, First Baptist Church.
And then Andy's from Perspective State. Chanel Reporter, Green County Public Health.
Mary Dawson, Fairborn Fish.
Craig Foreman, I'm with Abiding Christ Lutheran Church.
All right. And again, I'm June Fryman, also at Abiding Christ Lutheran Church. Thank you, everyone. Oh, I forgot. We passed over you, Nancy and Peter.
I'm Deacon Nancy Trimble. I serve this church in West Carolina. So I'm in contact.
Okay. Well, thank you again, everyone. And I think at this time, then we'll start breaking into those groups. Let me just briefly go over those, and then I'll give you Actually, I'll give you your assignment for today before I dismiss you. So the satellite office group, you're going to be meeting in room number 1, and I can't remember, in the lounge. So satellite office, room number 1, that is numbered, right? There's a number on the door. Numbers on the door. It's also the lounge.
Folks out there in the directions, so don't worry about finding them. There's folks out there showing you the directions.
And when you go out, there will be, should we just get them in their rooms and then pass that paper around? Okay. When you get to your room, there'll be a sign-up sheet coming around for your group and your contact information. So working on establishing a satellite office, we'll be in the lounge, room number 1. Working on emergency shelter and finding an emergency overnight shelter would be room number 2, which is the conference room, room number 2. The executive board is going to stay right here in the sanctuary. So executive board will stay here if you're interested in helping develop that. And I'm thinking some of the steering committee will probably be part of that. Establishing a flow chart. If you have interest and expertise in helping to establish a flow chart, what does it take to go from being unsheltered to sheltered in various situations? That would be group room number 4, which is the intermediate. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's number 4 on the door. Number 4. Number 4 for the flow chart. And then prevention and diversion services will be room number 3. Okay. Okay. Okay.
But they're across the hall from each other down.
Yeah.
So 3 is the previous one, the flow chart.
3 will be flow chart.
4 is the
Prevention. Right. Right. So when you leave here, then you'll go to your room to work out when your group's going to meet next, because you're going to need to meet as a group probably another time or two. So you'll establish your next meeting date just for your group, and you can decide when and where that will be. That's what you're going to report back here in this room in 30 minutes. And then I think you'll need to take a minute or 2 or 5 just to introduce yourselves and what your experience is and what you're bringing to the table and the resources you might have available. If you have time, you might actually sketch out what's information you need to get and who's going to go get that information. But most important is you're setting up your next meeting time for your committee. And then you're going to report that back to this whole group. That way, if there weren't people here today who want to be on your committee, we're going to be able to tell them when your next meeting is and where it's going to meet. So you're going to go to your room. You're going to introduce yourselves and what you do and what you bring to the table. You're going to set up your next meeting. And if there's another few minutes, you're going to start brainstorming what's the information you need to gather, and then you're going to meet back here and report that. Are there any questions about that? Sure. Yep, let's have the satellite office. If you think you want to work on that satellite office of one-stop shop of information here in Fairborn, you can go to room number